to episode 11 of Athletics for Life podcast. In this episode, we want to kind of review the last 10 episodes. We've had 10 already. It's crazy, hard to believe. And just pick out some things that kind of stuck out to us in those 10 episodes and kind of the golden nuggets from those first 10. So we started this channel. We want to promote education-based athletics in Mongolia in our division, as well as to a broader audience and here on YouTube. And so we're trying to kind of promote these things like learning lessons through sports and make sure that our athletes understand that, our parents understand that, the coaches that work for us, and hopefully some of the other coaches in our conference can learn something from this, and just kind of make sure that all our shareholders, our entire community is on the same page for what we're trying to do with sport and why we do what we do as athletic directors. And so the kind of people that we have on the show, we have had alumni on the show from some of the schools we've been at. We've had other athletic directors. We've had leaders in organizations like the NIAAA and ACAMIS, to people who run large fitness companies and kind of how they can promote a healthy lifestyle to our athletes. So, Jeff?
Yeah, so this is the 11th episode already, and time is flying, CD. Time is flying. And we actually started this channel that we were trying to connect and find a way to connect, and we saw the Globetrottin ADs doing it. And they only started in January, which was very just a year ago, and they are booming. They're everywhere right now in the international world, and we thought we can do that too. And they were very inspiring to us. But we cannot do this alone. We have a team around us. Well, actually, one person who's doing all the editing, and I would like to introduce Scott Lillis to our podcast, the man behind the camera. CD always says that we are just the pretty faces doing the whole episode, but actually Scott is that person behind the camera, and he makes us look good, which is remarkable. That's amazing. So Scott, thank you for coming on our episode today.
Thank you very much. It's weird seeing myself on the screen instead of just you two.
Yeah. So Scott, we asked you to help us because I have no clue how to do all the editing and stuff, and I want to get better at that. And it's something we need to learn. But you're very good at that stuff, and you are also the tech integrator at the International School of Ulaanbaatar. So how have you been in these first 10 episodes? How did you experience it working with us?
Oh my gosh, do we have a couple hours? No, certainly it's been fun and it's been enjoyable. It's something different. Obviously, I wouldn't call myself an athlete per se. Definitely a sports enthusiast, playing a number of sports in my day and still enjoying watching and participating myself. But I think it has been really important, especially this year, trying to keep that connection with our school community, our families, our athletes, and certainly the broader community as well. And my goal is to try to do that kind of to the best of our ability. So yes, like when you talked about this, doing a podcast, we could do an audio podcast. That's pretty easy. I wanted it to look better and kind of go the extra mile. We talk about Joe Rogan's podcast and one camera. I think, again, my goal was always to see, well, what do we have and how can we make this look as good as we can? Sound as good, not only get quality guests as well, but have it be a solid audio-visual production. So hopefully, I think we've done that in some degrees better than others, especially now with going towards Zoom and being online. But that's been my biggest, and it's a good challenge, and I've enjoyed kind of trying to rise to that challenge, and we'll kind of continue that this year when we have sports events, trying to live stream those and trying to get those games out there to people.
Yeah, it's been great having you, Scott, especially, out here where my internet isn't the greatest, being forced to be, on Zoom where calls are cutting in and out. Just looking at the end result from some of the interviews that in the moment for me didn't feel as smooth, then seeing the final product, it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, again, that's sort of the challenge and the kind of fun of it, I think, from a tech perspective as well. Okay, do we keep everything? Do some things need to go? Not that we want to, change the feel of the interview. We've still kept everything, and really, we've kind of kept pretty much everything in most of the episodes.
Yeah, we made various different episodes, face to face, and then you being at different locations, same location, Zoom, or it's been very interesting, and we actually made it better and better. Of course, now we are in a strict lockdown, unfortunately, so we are bound to this virtual session like we're doing. But yeah, exactly. But we're doing much better, and I think over you can see a upgrade in the episodes throughout from
like
1 to 10.
A rise and then kind of a little drop again because of that, but definitely. And like I said, I think that's been the biggest challenge and what sort of makes it a little more exciting for me, like not being part of the interviews and doing that part, but the technical aspect and trying to kind of rise to that challenge and do the best we can with what we've got and what we're working with.
Yeah, because I think it works together, right? So we talk, but all we want is to get the message across, and we do that by speech, but also by attracting more viewers. So it needs to look good, it needs to look smooth, and that's very important.
Yeah, definitely. So again, thank you guys for the opportunity. It has been fun. I've enjoyed kind of learning with you as well, doing a podcast, because it is a bit of a different medium. I do have a background in television and film and stuff, so it kind of helps. But again, just with this world being the way it is now, is forcing us all to learn different things and adapt to it.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, it's been super fun, and we'll see where we go in this year. You never know, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Speaking of looking good, we got our shirts from College Pro.
Like we said, CD a bit too tight now over the winter break.
Christmas break, yeah.
Yeah, but College Pro.
Sponsored our show, right? They got us some nice shirts, some apparel. They're out of China, so any athletic
I have to do this correctly,
this side of the world. Yeah,
because I have to do this correctly, otherwise she will kill me.
Did she send you something to say?
Yeah, so she said they are a sports uniform manufacturer from Hong Kong officially. But why we asked College Pro to be our sponsor is because we are very isolated here in Mongolia. It's hard to get quality uniforms for our kids. So I've been working with College Pro for a long time, even when I was back in China. But to get stuff here shipped and of high quality, it's just difficult. So College Pro is always very helpful. Everything we want, they make. We send all our designs there. So I asked them to be our sponsor. They were very happy to be our sponsor for the podcast. So they sent us some nice shirts. Our merchandise line will go up in a few weeks, so you can go to the link now. maybe in the near future. So once Scott has his shirt, we all look pretty cool on the podcast.
That's perfect. Okay. So should we get started on lessons learned in the past 10 episodes?
Yeah, sounds like a good idea. So we want to just go back to all the episodes. We had 10 over 6 months, which is pretty cool. And just to go over some basic golden nuggets, quotes, stuff that we gained from these episodes. Yeah, well, the first episode, CD.
Yeah, first episode, we interviewed Doug Killgore, Bowtie AD. He's taught a few classes with the NIAAA, and he was great. It was really nice talking to him. He's got so much passion for athletics and teaching and working with us. He was more than happy to give us his time, which was awesome. And one thing that really stuck out to me was he mentioned that like the kids that we're working with now, in the future, they're going to be the ones taking care of us. And, as a young guy, you don't really think about that. You know, he's older. He's getting to the point where he's relying on doctors and nurses and dentists and professionals, you know, and he's looking to the younger generation. So for us, I think it's important to keep in mind that, yeah, we are training the professionals of the future. And so a lot of their success is going to depend on, you know, us doing a good job and preparing them as teachers and coaches. So I thought that was something pretty interesting. That was my big takeaway from Doug.
Yeah, I just, you know, he was our first guest, and I remember it was almost midnight. I was pretty nervous because he lives in Arkansas, right? So the time difference with Ulaanbaatar, but his enthusiasm and his passion for athletics, for education, that's what really forced me to get him as the first guest, just to set the standard for our podcast. Because he's all about the kids, right? He has such energy, and he was on all those NYAAA courses early in the morning for him. He's retired. He could sit at home, you know, do nothing, but he's still he's a substitute teacher at his old school, high school, and he's just still involved, and he's everywhere. And that passion and energy, I hope I have that passion and energy when I'm there. I've done it all, and I'm just giving back, right? So that's really what Douglas meant for me, and I think for our podcast too.
Oh, most definitely. One of his quotes that he'd mentioned both in the podcast and in some of the courses he took that we got jotted down is comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And I thought that was just great. You know, the people that are struggling, just help them through, kind of guide them through. But then, you know, especially in sport, if you're comfortable, you shouldn't be comfortable. You should always be kind of seeking to get better, seeking to improve. So I think that's just a great quote from Doug.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, and you know, we had a conference, seemed like a long time ago, a Coaches for Coaches conference here, and he was our guest speaker actually. And I asked Doug to send a video to be the opening speaker, right? And he had 2 cameras set up, and he had his whole thing set up. And you know, I was like, you don't have to do that, but he did it for us.
Yeah,
you know, some guys in Mongolia.
The level of effort he put into that for us was awesome.
Yeah, and he made an impact with that. I know there were not many people in the room, but those who were there were like, wow, right? He spoke from the heart, and he really meant it. And yeah, he made an impact. So Doug, again, thank you so much for being our first guest, and it was great.
Yeah, much appreciated. Shortly after that, we interviewed Tom Ulmet with Heikens. We were both part of Heikens. For anyone who's just joining into the show, Heikens is the Association of Chinese and Mongolian International Schools. There are 77 schools in Heikens. There's many sports. They have professional development for schools. It's a pretty nice organization, pretty good organization, you know, for tournaments and for the PD. And with talking to Tom, what really stuck out to me is just realizing how much that Heikens has grown. You know, as, again, a younger guy, going to Heikens, you see it's already established, right? It's got a bunch of sports. I was already in a division, just taking over the program. But talking to him, seeing how it's grown from used to be just 3 core sports, a handful of schools, now up to 77 schools, a ton of activities. They've even got robotics tournaments, robotics events. And so just kind of hearing him talk about that continually improving, continually growing was really important.
Yeah, so, you know, those Heikens trips are highlights for our kids, right? And we all have those all over the world, those travel trips, those overseas trips, and just those memories the kids build with those trips are just, you know, they're amazing. And you could see that when we talked to Tom, also connected that to the current pandemic, you know, the sadness a little bit about that, that the kids cannot travel, cannot see their friends, cannot make those memories. Tom was talking a lot about getting people back to China. That was his main job at that time. To see his passion to get all the teachers back to China, to, you know, to get the programs back up running. A lot of passion.
Most definitely.
And someone else we would like to be on, who is going to be on a podcast, that Danny Clark. the head AD of Heikens. So Danny will be on our podcast in the next few months. So we can continue to talk about Heikens, what it means for him, hopes and dreams for this year, and yeah, we'll look forward to that.
Yeah, it's great. Danny will be a great guest. We followed that up interviewing one of your coworkers at ISU, Gerben Silvis. Did I say that right? Yeah.
Yeah, he goes by Ben, but officially he's from he's from Holland, and I'm always like, he's in Dutch we say Gerben, so but he goes by Ben. So we had Ben on the podcast, yes.
Yeah, and he was awesome. During the interview, that was my first time meeting him, and since I've met him quite a few times, just at events and stuff. But it was really cool just to sit down and talk to him. And the one takeaway for me from his interview and talking with him was kind of when he talked about reaching that status in Holland, and he was kind of like the top dog. He was the top scorer. There was nowhere for him to go. And so he kind of lost interest, right? And it wasn't until he got a call about being a pro, going pro in water polo. And that's when he kind of realized, and he made that jump from semi-pro to pro. And he just talked about how big of a difference that was from, practicing a couple times a week. It's kind of for fun. You're good at it, but it's not as intense as going pro. And I kind of mirrored that in my own experience. Going to university, there's a big jump from competing in high school and competing in university. And even one of our later guests talked about that, just the difference from training at ISU and then training at the college level or the NCAA level. So I think there's something to be said about the transition from being that big fish in a small pond to the small fish in a big pond. It can be a tough transition for people.
It can, yeah. And I like Ben too, because he really talked within our philosophy, and he's all about that philosophy. He works at my school, and we work really well together also in our programs. And because Ben went to the Olympics for Holland, water polo in 2000 to Sydney, and I think they became 11th, if I'm correct. Ben, don't get angry when it was higher, sorry. I think 11th in water polo. And he talked about the experience, the memories, the camaraderie in the whole Olympic village. He actually barely talked about the games itself. He talked about all the other stuff. And that's what we always talk about, right? And now he's here working at the International School of Ulaanbaatar, being the primary PE teacher, coaching swimming, and he's just very down to earth. And that difference, from doing that at the highest level to then supporting the kids to become better people, that's great. So Ben was a great interview. It was an interview. We had the interview in the swimming pool, so there was also an experiment for Scott, which was very interesting for the sound and everything. But I think it looked pretty cool.
Yeah, I think visually it was good. I don't know if the audio was great for Scott to deal with.
But yeah, that was still in the early stages of our podcast and experimenting. But I think it was a great third interview. Loads of things we can learn from Ben and his vision on sports.
Most definitely.
So we all had in mind what our podcast was about, and of course we want to go globally and talk about educational based athletics philosophy, but also we talked about connecting locally, and how do you do that by connecting with our alumni.
Yeah, it was awesome. So then I actually reached out to Dulguun, who was an athlete that I was able to coach. And because I think he took to heart a lot of the lessons that we're talking about in our show, right? And so what was pretty cool for me is we actually asked for the head coach, Mr. Gerhard Swart, Jerry, to say a few things about Dulguun. And we didn't play that on the episode, but basically Jerry mentioned how, Dulguun started out, he was a phenomenal athlete, but maybe not the best leader, kind of hot-headed, and wasn't really until like at the end of his senior season, at the end of his final year, that he really started to become a leader for his teammates, really started to buy into everything that Jerry had been, teaching for 2 years. And, it was awesome to see that Dulguun had also come to those realizations, right?
And I've seen Dulguun on the other side, right, as a competitor against Dulguun, and he was always scary. The kid can jump, and that's amazing. Such a nice kid too. Two things that stood out for me was when he talked about the connection with his parents when they came to his game, and that meant a lot to him. That was lovely to see. And again, that the kids need that support. Just, so important. And the other thing is that it takes time, because the first year or two, he didn't play much. And then later on in final years, he became captain, right? And then he was playing more. So it takes time to get to that level, and you need to take time. A lot of kids, they think that grade 9, and they show up and they get into the team that they can play the whole time. But it takes time to work up to that higher level. And sometimes that's a role you have to take that year. You are on the bench, but you still have a role. And that was lovely to hear him talk about that. That's like 4 years for him, like a process to get to that. And his resiliency. And his resilience, because he lost, right? The Heikens competition.
Yep.
So that was great to hear.
Yeah, it was good to talk to him again.
Good boy. And it was a beautiful scenery with the Mongolian gear behind us. It was lovely. Okay, good. So the alumni series, we will continue that this year for sure. We have 2 more coming up that we're going to talk about today, but more will come. I think it's very important to connect with our local audience.
Those are really fun interviews too.
Right? Yeah. So, 5th episode.
Next guest. Go ahead, Jeff. Yeah.
Should I? Okay, I'll go. So,
go ahead.
Alex Heikens, my fellow countryman, also from the Netherlands. Alex is the representative for UNICEF here in Mongolia. Both his daughters are at the international school over here. And he's a martial artist. And we asked him on our podcast. And we talked mainly about his martial arts passion.
Yeah, that was fun. We're in the middle of a global pandemic, and we're talking to, a guy who's probably day to day dealing with stuff surrounding that. Yeah. And he wanted to talk about sports with us, so that was cool. And that's what stuck out from the talk with Alex is just how much passion he had for martial arts and sports, despite not starting till he was 17 years old, I think it was.
Yeah.
And so, he wasn't an athlete in school. He wasn't one of the people on our sports teams, but he had even developed this passion for sports. So that was pretty awesome. And, a few things from him that kind of stuck out to me, just even on a personal level, just to remember to exercise and do the right thing, is he talked about making it a routine. And so often wherever he was in the world, he found a club or whether it was a kendo club or a taekwondo or now he's doing jiu-jitsu, something that's close by his work or his home that he can stop by on his way home instead of getting home, sitting down, eating dinner, and then trying to get up the motivation to kind of go work out, leave house and go work out. So, just structuring your day in a way that's conducive to staying physically active is an important lesson for anyone, from students to adults.
Yeah, and he was talking about his girls, right? So they have to do one day a week, I think, a martial art for self-defense, but also for all the skills that he was talking about. We talked a lot about the skills of martial arts. And, we talked about he's doing jiu-jitsu now, and his oldest daughter is very good at jiu-jitsu, about tapping, right? Tapping out and dropping that ego, because you have to tap, otherwise you break something. And there was a nice little thing we talked about dropping the ego. And also what I liked about the interview, it was very, very informal. The representative of UNICEF is talking to us in a difficult time, and then his cat is flying through our episode. And if you look at our thumbnail, you can see the cat behind him. And when the cat was jumping, he was just continuing. Like it was a very nice, not stressful conversation with Alex. So he's leading at the end of this year, and we wish him and the family all the best. And thank you for being on our podcast, Alex.
Yeah, that leads us into another alumni, Namuun Enkhbayar. She was actually an alumni at your school, ISU. And we were able to interview her at ISU. I think hers was the last interview we were able to do before we got quarantined into Zoom. But it was cool to hear her journey. And one thing that she had mentioned was consistency.
Yeah.
You know, she mentioned she's working out in the mornings before she goes to work. You know, and how she's kind of transitioned from organized team sports. She played at ISU, then she went to the States and played a year at the NCAA level, but now trying to stay physically active, and she's actually got into powerlifting, which was surprising. You know, I wasn't expecting that at the start of the interview.
No, Namuun has been she has two younger sisters. One graduated 2 years ago, and one is still in grade 9 right now, and they're lovely girls. So they're all athletes. I liked about Namuun that mindset that she has. So she's at the gym at 6, go to work at 7, and then work till 6, and that's routine. That consistency is the only way that you can succeed things. And it's lovely that she took all the lessons. She graduated before I came to ISU, but I know who she worked with, and you can see the lessons that these coaches and ADs taught her, and she's using it right now. That's great. And she came back to Mongolia also to make this place better, which is great to see. A lovely interview. And she had a powerlifting meet planned in March, I remember. Now I hope for her that can continue. Looking right now, it doesn't look that good. But Namuun, if you're watching, if it's continuing, we will come and support you in your competition. And she has a great bench. So good interview.
Yeah, what was cool for me too is she mentioned that it was a coach in grade 8 that really helped her realize her love for soccer, for football.
Soccer.
You know, and so, you know, sometimes when we're talking about our under 15 teams or under 13 teams, we don't always see them as in the same importance as our varsity team. But it's often at those ages that those coaches are the ones that really instill a passion for the sport. And so as an athletic director, it makes me mindful to make sure that the right people are coaching at that right age level, to get kids interested and to get kids to really fall in love with the sports they're playing, you know?
Yeah, and sometimes we forget those age levels, right? It's all about those, when the big varsity game is coming up, but those middle school, primary school, that's when you hook them to a sport, or you get that passion going. So that's great, because I can see the passion Namuun's sisters have. That her big sister was playing sports, so they wanted to play sports. So that's she inspires those younger generations at ISU. So that's great. Okay, so we go to the next interview, episode 7. So actually we interviewed our Globetrottin ADs, Matt Flemming and Nick DeForest. Actually, these are the guys that inspired me, and I think maybe you too, CD, to run a podcast. We had this in the back of our head for a long time, but they really inspired me because because they were ADs, they were doing this, so why can we not do this, right?
Yeah, it was really cool to sit down and interview them. You'd brought them up to me. I hadn't heard of them before. And then you said, yeah, there's these two guys. They were in a class or something. I'm not sure where you had originally found them. But you said, like, yeah, they're doing this podcast, interviewing ADs and stuff. We should do a podcast. And so this show kind of sprouted because of Matt and Nick, and the cool things that they're doing over at Globetrottin ADs. And a couple of things that stuck out, or just they were constantly mentioning, at different points throughout the episode, of just improvements, making regular improvements to their programs, to the process, to their show. And so, Nick mentioned he had a supportive administrator. They did regular evaluations, just looking for ways to continually improve things. And then Matt talked about just keeping things fresh in the program, not letting things get stale. And, it's kind of hard right now where we're not in school. We don't have our kids. And I think just having sports in general would keep things fresh. But it's something good to keep in mind for when we do return to something that's a little bit more normalized, a little bit more structured, more regular, just to keep things fresh and to keep continually getting more and more organized as time and years go on.
Yeah, I think, for me, those two guys, they inspired me I always had this boundary, like going out there, doing things, doing new things, right? And they just go for it, because they were like, oh, just start a podcast. And now they're everywhere. They host conferences and they just do it. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but at least you make an effort. And they were the inspiration for our Coaches for Coaches PD, actually, to do that, just to try. Nick and Matt are organizing a virtual student athlete leadership conference, February 12th, online. 15 international schools. They have 2 guest speakers, and then they have 15 international schools where the kids connect, where the kids do a presentation, a half-an-hour workshop on student athlete, on student leadership. I know Kirby from the American School in Moscow. He's talking about the Penguin program. It's a student leadership program. You have schools from Beirut, Bangkok, and 4 of my NYP 5 kids are doing a workshop CD on Genghis Khan's influence on student leadership. So they want to make a connection on what Genghis Khan can teach us. He can teach us a lot of things that we shouldn't do, mentioning that. But he has some good things too. And they want to make a connection, and then how they implement that in their sports activities here at ISU. They're going to do a workshop on Zoom, half an hour. But the main thing for me is that they can make a connection. So, that's something that Matt and Nick are just organizing, just extra. They don't get anything for it. They just do it for the kids and for the viewers. So that's just an inspiration. And if you want more information about NYAAA training, PD, please go to their website and to their listen to their podcast.
Yeah, Globetrottin ADs. It's pretty good. It's a good podcast, good show.
Okay.
Our next guest, number 8, Brett Jones. He works at Strong First.
Yes.
Very prominent kettlebell company, and just a great source of all around good information for training and training philosophies and training programs. And we talked to Brett for quite a while just about kettlebells. And so for me, one of the things is I want to develop a better fitness department, a better fitness room, someplace that athletes can train. It's something the school that I'm at now just doesn't have. Mm-hmm. And so just kind of looking at the cost to benefit ratio of kettlebells compared to, fully fledged fitness room, you can get a pretty good bang for your buck with just an assortment of kettlebells. He talked a lot about, training athletes, training younger athletes. And he had a good quote that I copied down. I had to go back and listen to it again. But he talked about the get-up, the Turkish get-up, and how it's alignment with integrity under load. And how that's so great for kids just to learn how to place their body in space. Right? A lot of our kids are very uncoordinated. They don't really know how to move their body around. And so we teach them how to align their body correctly and safely underneath a load. And so I just thought the whole episode was awesome. Just him showing techniques, how to implement with young athletes. It was pretty awesome episode with Brett.
Yeah, I think this is like a hidden gem of our podcast. I think Brett, he's the executive director of Strong First.
Yeah.
And that he took time out of his schedule to talk to us for half an hour about the benefits of kettlebells, shows how much passion and how much he wants to share with us, right? If he can help 2 kids to become better athletes or better people, then he does that. He's a busy man, because I've done a lot of research on Brett. He's all over the place. He's everywhere. So to have him was just amazing. And I think, with this whole COVID time, we have to think smarter. A lot of schools just, drop a beautiful fitness facility in their school, and here it is,
Yeah.
He talks a lot about the principles, about techniques, about, bang for the buck, what the hell effect, that carryover between athletics, between sports, and everything he's talking about connects to academics, to life, in general. Mm-hmm. And the whole podcast, I was just listening like, I was just quiet because Brett was talking, and I was like, bang, bang. I was like, oh wow, this is so. Athletes, I would really recommend to go back to this episode and watch it because you can learn a lot.
Yeah, his was great.
Yeah. So Brett, thank you so much for taking the time to be on our podcast, and we will see more of you in the future for sure because you share so much knowledge and which our kids can benefit from. So one way or another, we have to have a follow up with Mr. Brett Jones. So hopefully this year.
Yeah, definitely. Following Brett, we had Buyanaa Boldbaatar, another alumni from ISU.
Yes.
And he's currently at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. And it was cool to talk to him. I don't know if I mentioned in the episode that I actually went to a summer wrestling camp a couple times at the Naval Academy in Annapolis. And so I've actually been like at the same place training with some of the guys that used to wrestle at the Naval Academy. They were running the camp, and I just got a little taste of what life was like at the Naval Academy. So I could kind of relate to him when he's talking about how strict everything is and how structured it is. And but I was just really impressed with Buyanaa. Seeing him from the other side of the bench again, like you had said before. I never coached him. I saw him always as a competitor. He was always kind of fun and easygoing. Definitely not someone I would have expected to be where he's at today. And so to see that growth out of him and to see how well he's handling it is awesome. Just his self-management skills, accountability. He's had such a focus on nutrition that I think is really important and often overlooked in our programs. So it's just a lot of good information from him and kind of where he's at now and the growth that he's gone through since leaving Mongolia.
Yes, and remember when he started talking, because we were asking him about how does your day look like? He's like, yeah, at 0600 and then at 0800. I'm like, wow, Buyanaa was a kid who was so nervous before every game. He couldn't, he was with the volleyball, he was our setter, and he was wrapping his hands. It was just like this crazy thing that he was doing. And then he was very methodical with his talk, with his routine, with the things he believed in. Again, Buyanaa is representing Mongolia at the Naval Academy, and I think that link is very important. That it's coming from the heart again. He has a purpose to go there. He has a purpose to succeed, not only for himself but for his parents, for his country. And that's beautiful to see. And when Buyanaa started, he couldn't swim.
Yeah, that's crazy.
He couldn't swim because he's built like a Mongolian, so he sinks. Like he's when he goes in the water, he just drops down to the bottom. So he worked a lot on his swimming, and to see that he's passing all his tests, that sees that he's the evidence that you can do whatever you want as long as you work for it. It takes time, it takes consistency, it takes everyday, effort. And it was great to see Buyanaa. I showed the episode to his parents and to his sister. She's working to go to West Point, and she passed the first two tests. So he made an impression on them, and it was great for them to see their son because they haven't seen him for a long time. They were very happy. So now Buyanaa, again, these alumni stories are great because they show our younger generation that you can do a lot of good things and sports bring a lot of good to your life. So more of those coming up.
Definitely. That leads us to our 10th episode. Brendan Tobin. He's another athletic director that we got a chance to interview, sit down with and talk about just life and how we're dealing with sports and COVID. And one thing that I thought was just awesome from Brendan's interview, that I've mentioned in a couple of the courses that I took from the NIAAA, is just to not forget about the good things that are coming out of this pandemic and the shutdown. He mentioned that he was able to participate in some virtual cross-country events out of China, Moscow. He ran one, and hopefully he was hoping that those sort of things won't go away when we go back to kind of normal, that we can still have some of the cooler things that have come out of this. And it's always good to, no matter what situation you're in, just to remember the silver lining, right? Like no matter how bad it is, something good generally came out of it. You learned something, you pushed yourself, you passed a barrier. And so just always look for that silver lining.
Yeah, so Brendan, one of my previous colleagues, he moved to Uzbekistan to a new school, and Brendan is the AD in Uzbekistan. And he was like, yeah, Jeff, you should get in contact with Brendan. Maybe in the future you can work together with your schools. And I'm like, okay. And we had a Zoom meeting because it was already in COVID time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just connected with Brendan because I knew from the start that he had that same kind of philosophy. He was only talking about the kids. I want to do this for the kids and the kids and the kids. I'm like, okay, we have a connection here, right?
Yeah.
So that was great. And then, he organized a virtual cross country. So I think he managed to get over 30 schools and 150 kids involved from all over the world. And
awesome.
He organized a very cool event. And actually, our kids got a certificate, and he showed all the results, and he tried to make it as official as possible. And he was only talking about in our podcast about why did you do it, to connect the kids. And that's all he cared about, connecting the kids. And what I learned from that is just do it. If you can if you can influence one or two kids or one or two coaches, then you're doing a good job. And I think he influenced a bit more than that, actually. It took him a lot of work, a lot of effort. He said too that he would have wished to have a better follow-up, maybe with a video or with a podcast or with pictures. But then just do it. He tried, and it was a success. So, it was a great interview with Brennan. Again, very easy, a good talker, and we will interview more ADs in this year. Loads of them have interesting stories. All of them do something for the kids that is different than someone else, right? So we want to try to find those stories because we're all different, but we all bring something unique to our students. We're looking for you guys. So if you're interested, please contact us.
Yeah. I think 2021 is going to be great. Just looking ahead at some of the people we've got jotted down on our list, from people in the NIAAA, we've mentioned Danny Clark and Akamis. We just went through the NIAAA's conference, their virtual conference, a month ago, 2 months ago, by the time this comes out. And just how many different athletic directors around the world that have stories to share, like you said, that we've reached out to be on the show. It's pretty cool just to make those connections with people all over the world that are going through similar things to us, and kind of picking their brain to see how they worked through that, how they dealt with their problems in their part of the world. So it should be pretty cool.
Yeah, and there's some other. So we're looking for, and also coaches. We still want to look for some alumni or also some interesting people. We had a few podcasts lined up that didn't really work out because of the lockdown. We still want to talk to Mark Coronel. I met Mark in Guangzhou a few years ago. He's the head trainer of TRX, suspension trainer. So that, again, very interesting. He shares that philosophy. Like we talked just about Brett, about that alignment, and he has that. He's all about longevity, multi-sport athletes. And so it's great to talk to Mark. Also some PD for coaches. There's some hidden gems around the world with people sharing resources. So we want to get in contact with those. Some ADs who are transitioning or are new, or we met them online. We're like, hey, that's an interesting guy, or that response was very cool. Yep. He would be good for the podcast. And I remember we were texting each other, we should get him on the podcast. For me, CD, personally, I think it's very interesting to have some US-based ADs on, because of course it's very different, and I'm from the Netherlands, so I have a very different background than most the ADs, right? But for us international ADs, I found out that it's very hard to understand it for me sometimes, but I can learn a lot from these US-based people. They seem very methodical, law, all that stuff. So for me, that's a very interesting one, just to pick their brains. What can I take from them? Or what can we give to the people from US-based ADs.
Yeah, I think just like you said, having the U.S.-based athletic directors in a lot of the classes that we were in or some of the courses that we were in, and just like the perspective is totally different in what's important, what's challenging. I think that we have a lot to offer each other, and so we'll definitely be reaching out to some of those in the coming months and in the coming episodes. So it should be 2021 should be a pretty good year.
Yeah. We're gonna wrap this up, CD.
Yep.
We're gonna finish this episode. So please subscribe. Look us up on YouTube, Athletics for Life. Watch our podcasts. If there's anything you want to share with us, just send us an email. Our email addresses are in all the links below in the YouTube videos. If you want to be on the podcast, if you have an interesting story, get in contact. We have a Twitter page. It's also a link on there. So please go there and support our cause.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of behind the scenes, I've been working on trying to put together a website for us and just get some of these interviews into text format. Trying to format that's been interesting and just in a way that's easy to read and good to read if people don't want to listen to it. But that's yet to come. So if you're listening in the future, perhaps it's already in the description below. Perhaps I've finished that and gone back and edited the description. So, but hopefully that should be up in later in 2021 as well.
Yeah. So that's gonna be it for this episode. The next episode we're looking at mid-February for our next guest on our episodes. For now, everybody have a great 2021. Happy New Year, and from the Athletics for Life podcast crew, bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.